Welcome again, all you degens. It is I, TJ, with your overlord, the deacon of degeneracy, Watkins over here, with our first week of uh, our our grades for what the NFC North teams have done. Next week will be the NFC East. We've already put out a casting call for those four team owners. If they want to join us, just let us know by this Sunday, which is what the 16th, something like that.
Something like that.
That way, yes, that way we can get you guys scheduled in for a time and get you guys in for some answers. Before we start, just a few housekeeping notes. Uh, we are still taking applications for moderators. We haven't picked any out yet, so if you put them in and you haven't heard anything yet, it's because we haven't picked any yet. But we do want to get a couple more apps in before we actually finish that process. I had spoken to Watkins earlier, and he'd already put something on Discord about it. But I want to do like an eliminator challenge, and I'll put more up about that a little bit later. For those of you who don't know what the eliminator challenge is, you basically pick a team every week that you think is going to win. If you win, you continue on to the next week. The caveat is you can only pick one team during the season once. So you can't pick the Chiefs and the Bills and the 49ers for 17 weeks. So it's fun. We'll probably do a winner take all on that. It'll probably be a good amount of money as long as we get a lot of people who want to join in on that. Third, we also he put something about the game of the week. I'm not sure what that will entail yet. Uh, I want to do something in Prime where we pick a game and that will be our game of the week, and maybe like the winner of that week, the game of the week will win like a $10 pot or something like that. I'm not sure yet how to pick the game of the week. I was originally going to do something like whatever two teams had the highest total projected scores. The issue with that is you're going to get a lot of the same teams over and over again. While I do want this to be something where it is enticing people to try and win their schedules, I don't want it to be something where it's something like the Chiefs and the Eagles and the Cowboys every single week, and whoever they happen to be playing, because it's just not fair to those teams who are rebuilding. So we'll figure something out, whether it be just a vote or something like that. So
I have some
uh,
ideas for it. We'll talk.
good, good. That's it for my side of the housekeeping. Watkins, if you had any housekeeping, now's as good a time as any to add that in.
My only thing is that the startup wait list for both the Dynasty IDP and Salary IDP leagues are still forming. So if you want to be a startup owner in either of those two leagues that are coming, DM me ASAP before all the slots fill up.
Okay. As you can see, there is a third screen. That is just my screen. That's got our Prime League up in here. So we'll probably reference that often. We also will have a couple of guests. We'll have Trey and Grant, who own the Minnesota team. They have graced us with their presence tonight to be interviewed. We'll see what they have to say. Hopefully, it'll be a great interview. And with that, we'll get into the first teams. This will be pretty quick, I think, because there's not a lot of questions. Obviously, we want to ask because they're not here. There were some questions, though. We'll start with the Detroit Lions. Actually, I'm going to throw a curveball. We'll start with Green Bay. So we'll start with the Green Bay Packers. First, we'll go over what the questions are. We'll kind of see what our take would be on their behalf and go from there. I do have some questions for Watkins as well, since he is here for Chicago. After that, we will go over our records, projected records for the four teams. And then we're also going to pull out what we think will be the offensive and defensive MVP for the NFC North is going to be, and maybe a little bit of background on why we think that. So with Green Bay being first, the question presented to them was, again, thanks to The Edge, why would you keep Russell Wilson if you're in a full rebuild? And how long before you think that you'll be able to compete? So In regards to Russell Wilson being the quarterback that he chose to keep, I think it was kind of one of those things where the trade he was offered, that was a quarterback that they had. He did have, I believe, Josh Allen before that. Let's see, let's pull it. So he traded Wilson and he got out of it, or he traded for Wilson and got out of it. A 23 first round, a 24 first round and second, and a 25 second round, trading Lamar Jackson and his 24 third and second, and his 2025 third round. Um, I don't think this is where he's kind of going on what his future is going to be. He didn't draft anybody either. He may be waiting until to use one of those draft picks for this coming year. Obviously, he's in a rebuilding year. When you look at his entire team in terms of projections, he's got two guys projected to score over 200 points in Wilson and Jones, the linebacker out of LA. So I don't think this is what his end all be all is. And if you pull up his team, we get back up here to the north. He's got, in terms of draft picks, just for next year, he's got 3 first rounds, 2 second rounds, a third, and a fourth. Um, I think that's where you'll see his quarterback come into play. I would not be surprised if
I
I
don't.
see
Yeah, because
Russell
he's got his own first round pick, and you know he's going to be a bottom 10 team. So we're looking at a top 10 pick next
top
year,
5 probably.
maybe even top 5. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Russell probably gets traded at some point this year, maybe for someone who is contending, who may have had their quarterback injured, probably for more draft capital. So that would be my suspected answer for that. I have not heard from him, but that's where I would go. Do you have anything to add to that worthless one?
Yeah, my only thing with Wilson is asking why he's holding him if he's full rebuilding is the answer is probably there's nobody to trade him to yet. Because no contending team is going to want Wilson over who they have now.
Yeah.
And no rebuilding team is going to want Wilson. So who do you trade him to? He got some really good draft assets out of Lamar Jackson to a contending team and got Wilson in return. I think what you said about him trading it to a contending team whose quarterback gets injured is probably hitting the nail on the head. He'll wait and see if somebody desperately needs Wilson to continue to compete because of an injury, and that's when he'll trade him.
Yeah, and I wouldn't sit here and lie and say I think that he's keeping Wilson because look, he only had one bad year. Regardless if he had one bad year, when you're in a rebuild, Russell Wilson probably isn't the answer. So that's kind of where we go with on that with the Packers. The next team would be the Lions.
Hold on, back to the Packers. Because I know one of the questions was when he expects to compete. I think the answer to that is probably 2026. Because he's got, like you said, he's got 3 firsts and multiple second and third round picks next year. But if you go back and look at 2025,
so
his 2025 draft class is just as big.
2024 is quiet, and then 2025 it gets right back into it. So yeah, you're gonna see those kids from 2024.
Look at that, that's 3 firsts, 5 seconds, 2 thirds, and a fourth in 2025.
Yeah. You're going to see those kids from the 2024 draft coming back around who are going to start getting their feet, firmly planted in. And you're going to see some of those kids from 2025. Some of them will compete right away. Most probably won't. I don't know. 25 is probably where he'll start.
No, I'm saying it's 2026. You're going to. Yeah. The 2024 draft picks are going to be in their second full year in the league, or coming into their third year in the league, and the 2025 guys are going to be in their second year in the league.
Yeah.
And then I'll have his 2026 draft class that are rookies. I think 2026 is the year that the Packers go from being a rebuilding team to a rebuilt team.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I think 2026 is probably the year that they're looking to actually compete, which isn't that far. We're only talking to
and in a league like this, I mean, we're all in this for the long haul. So if he successfully rebuilds that team to be a full stop contender, then we're looking at the future champion of the NFC North for a long time coming potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually pulling up the Edge's question for the Lions because I want to make sure I get it worded right. Because you're going to have your aspect on this, and I'm going to try and take the Lions aspect on it because it does involve you. What the Edge said was he'd like to hear the in-depth outlook from the Lions, if possible, on the trade that led to it being made, what his plan is now, etc.
So
So,
you should probably pull the trade up for reference.
yeah, let's see here. So there you go. Let me get back down to
It
the
is
screen
Willie
here.
Gay, Kyle Pitts, Terrence Marshall, Jalen Pitre, and Kirby Joseph for my entire 2023 draft class, which was a first,
Right, which wasn't
four
just three.
seconds, and 2/3.
Yeah. So my assumption at this point, Watkins, was you were kind of not fully sold in on the year. I don't think you were on a rebuild, but you were prepared to make this a year in which you could add to, maybe compete this year and go into next year. But I'll let you kind of say what your thoughts were going
So,
into it.
from my side of it, being the Bears owner, and on the receiving end of the players, I didn't think that I was full on competing this year, but I knew that I would be competitive, right? Like I thought there was an outside chance I might be able to push for a wild card, but that ultimately the Vikings were going to win the division.
Okay.
I'm not going to leak what led up to that exact trade. Like that wasn't the only offer. Obviously, we talked back and forth, but there actually wasn't as much talking as you might think. But seeing that trade, and I know a lot of people really took my side of that trade as like the clear winner. But I don't know, like in the moment that was so hard to hit accept on to to give up your entire draft class. And if you look at the date on it, May 9th, that wasn't that far away from our rookie draft. So I don't know. I obviously really like the players I got, and I think it put me in a good position to now compete right away. But man, was it rough giving up my entire draft class this year for them.
And I think a lot of people would say that Pitts was uh, the top,
The anchor of the trade.
yeah, the anchor of this trade. Um, and we'll get to that in a minute. But you can see actually before Watkins got him, Deluxe actually got him from El Cacho for kind of the same thing. I mean, it was uh,
Leonard Fournette. Is
yeah,
that Aaron Rodgers or Amari Rodgers? I don't even know. Oh, it's Amari Rodgers. Aaron
all
Rodgers
right.
is on the Buccaneers. Amari
Um,
Rodgers, Kyle Pitts,
Pitts
Nico Collins,
Collins,
Davis
Mills,
Mills,
Pitre.
and
A
Pitre.
lot of those, a couple of those players actually ended up going to you.
Yeah,
So
Pitts and Pitre.
I think a lot of people have different value on Pitts. We'll let you know when we get to the Bears. We'll kind of let you kind of go over that. Personally, I don't know that I would trust Pitts, um, being that he's on the those that shall not be named. But yeah, I don't think either one of you got fleeced when because you both knew what you were going for at the time. You were going for this year, and he's going for the future. We'll pull up real quick what his draft looks like coming up here soon because again, his players aren't great either right now. But in 24, he's got two firsts, one, two, three, four seconds, three thirds, two fourths. So that's what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 draft picks next year. Um, and then after that is first through fourth. So he is probably looking at trying to become competitive 2025. Um, I don't know if that's enough picks to get there. I think right now his team is in a better spot than Green Bay in
Yeah,
terms
he has more
of
immediate impact players than Green Bay does currently.
yeah. I think P Dog is a little more top heavy.
Yep.
He's got a couple more players up in there in terms of projections. Obviously, uh, he's got more players that are projected to score over 200 points as opposed to Deluxe not having anybody over 200. But I think Deluxe has more 100-point players, so a little bit more depth
Yeah.
to kind of start. So those are the two teams and the questions they were asked. We'll now get to Watkins, and then after that, we'll get to our interview with Trey and Grant on their questions for Minnesota. So first off, we'll keep with the edge and his questions, and then I got a few of my own for you. But what are your thoughts on Pittman on possibility of being a bust?
So I'm gonna be honest here. I don't actually know that much about Pittman. He wasn't like a wide receiver that was super on my radar. I assume he's asking because of how much I paid for him, which if you want to pull up the trade, what did I trade? I traded Terrence Marshall, Kirby Joseph, a first, a second, and a fourth in 2025 for Curtis Samuel, Ed Oliver, and Michael Pittman. So nearly my entire 2025 draft class, plus a young wide receiver and a young good DB for 2 wide receivers and a defensive tackle. Pittman's only 25. He becomes probably the oldest player on my roster, starting roster at least. I've built very young for a reason. But like I said, I don't actually know a whole lot about him. I just know that it's going to be extremely difficult to get starting wide receiver talent in this league, as it's been shown. Like, getting anybody to let go of starting wide receivers is damn near impossible. So I was willing to overpay slightly just for the fact that I'm getting a wide receiver 1.
It's looking like, I mean, the past 2 years, he hit 240, 222.
Yeah.
What would you be happy with him?
I'd be thrilled if he replicated what he did last year. If he was a 222 player, I'll be thrilled.
So
right. Yeah. Now he's got Richardson. Obviously, their offense is going to look way different this year, so I don't really know what to expect.
Yeah.
But Taylor, I would be thrilled
if he's healthy to have the running game to help open him up. Yeah.
Yeah. I would be thrilled if he just ends as a top 25 PPR wide receiver next year. Because every player like that will help propel you, closer to a championship.
Yeah, sure, 100%. I mean, I think he's.
And I think getting Curtis Samuel and Ed Oliver in that trade is overlooked. Curtis Samuel, while not a flashy player, is a very solid depth wide receiver. Only 26. He finished 34th in PPR last year. Besides the year before that, he was injured when he was with Carolina. He was a top 40, 30 wide receiver a couple times. Like, I'm not expecting more than that out of him. But if he finishes a top 40 wide receiver, then that's solid depth.
Yep.
And then Ed Oliver is, I mean, he's one of the best defensive tackles in the league, but he doesn't score fantasy points. He's not a solid starter in fantasy, but he is very good depth.
I mean,
he's incredibly consistent.
For a D lineman to be consistently over 100 points, I would take it.
Yeah, like he's not a starter. He's not in my starting defensive lineup, but he's solid young depth, incredibly consistent.
Good depth. Yeah, absolutely. And then his second part of his question was, what kind of a leash do you have for Fields? So, how far do you go if Fields has a bad start to this year like he did last year?
So, all right. I not only own the Bears in the Prime League, I am a diehard Bears fan. The Fields doesn't have a leash. It's fucking Fields' house. He runs his house. I don't think this is still going to be a question next year.
Okay.
Fields doesn't have a leash because he's not going to need one. He's going to finish top 10 easy. He was 7 last year with a bad offense, and he struggled.
Do you think he makes it through the year without missing 2 games?
Yes. Did he miss any last year?
I feel like he missed a couple games. Let's see here. Yeah, he played 15, so
he missed 2 games.
Yeah, he missed 2 games.
He missed 2 games and finished as the 7th PPR back with his legs. I mean, let's be honest. Look at those. With his legs. But we had a DJ Moore, better offensive line. Traded David Montgomery, which I don't love, but I like drafting Roshan Johnson and getting Dante Foreman from the Panthers in the DJ.
Oh, Deontay. Yeah. Okay.
So they got him to replace Monty, we'll say. But I mean, between Herbo, Dante, and Roshan Johnson, their running back room, which I know was one of the other questions, I think. So I can speak more on the running back room in a minute. But between that stacked running back room, adding DJ Moore, redoing the offensive line, I expect Fields to be fine. And a lot of people say he can't pass and that we're going to be limited because he can't throw the ball. I think those people don't watch Bears games. That's all I'm going to say. Like, Fields has always been able to throw the ball just fine. We just had a bad offense and a bad offensive line. So he was out there running for his goddamn life.
To be fair, I can throw a ball just fine as well, but you got to be accurate to be in the NFL. So.
I don't think he's as bad as people say he is. I am thrilled as a Bears fan first to have Justin Fields as our QB1, and I don't think I'm going to have to worry about having a leash on him. He's my starting quarterback in this league until he retires.
Okay.
Maybe.
He may retire early because he is a running back.
That is true.
We'll see. He may be the next Lamar Jackson. He may be the next Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
Not that Kyler Murray's career is over, but
technically he's up for sale. If anybody wants him, you can come trade for him right now. But just don't ask for something you're not willing to hear the price on.
Okay. All right, so those were the Edges questions. Here are my questions for you. I kind of gave you a brief glimpse earlier in the day, so you could prepare. My first question is, do you think you did enough to win this division this year?
I don't know. I built really young on purpose. You can pull my roster up if you want. I think the oldest starter in my starting lineup is 25 years old. And that is Michael Pittman and Montgomery are all 25. Monty might be 26. Not sure. But 25-26 is the oldest player as I have as a starter on either side of the ball. So 26. Monty's 26. Pittman's 25. I think those are the two oldest guys on either side of the ball that I have in my starting lineup. Will I win the division this year? I think that's up to the Vikings ultimately.
Okay.
And how well they do. Obviously, I'm not the Cowboys. I'm not the Chiefs. I'm not the Eagles. But I think I got some of the best young players on either side of the ball that have the potential to get better every year that they're in the league. Mostly defense in Pitre and Quay Walker, Jaquan Brisker. But also Christian Watson. I'm a huge Christian Watson fan, and it hurts saying that as a Bears fan, that every time I see the Packers play, I'm rooting for Christian Watson.
Part of that is, are you a big Jordan Love fan, though, as well?
I don't know enough about Jordan Love to know about him. I have him in a couple leagues, so I'm kind of hoping he does well. But my thought process as a Bears fan is that he's a Green Bay Packers quarterback, so he's going to be a Hall of Famer, so I'm not really worried.
All my life. All right. Well, the next question: if things do start going badly for you, would you decide to fire sell, or you think you're going to run the course since you have no picks this coming up next year?
I have a second-round pick next year, thank you, and a fourth-round pick currently, I think. Okay. But like nothing in 2025. This goes back to my team being extremely young. I don't think I'm going to fire sale if there's growing pains or some of the players don't quite take the next leap I think they will, or if there's injuries, that just means that I won't win the division and the Vikings probably will. But I don't plan to fire sale. I've got 6 more years of all of these players being in their prime. Half of them aren't even going to be in their prime for a couple of years.
Yeah. 3 picks in the next 2 years, 7 total in the next 3 years. So
yes. But I have good depth. I can trade for things. If I want picks, I can trade for picks. Yeah,
and that's what I'm saying. Like, if it comes down to that, would you fire sale, or do you think you're just going to run the course? And
I'm gonna let it ride.
Okay. One team that is probably going to be a thorn in your side is actually going to be our next guest.
Real quick, I know we briefly touched on it, but I know one of the questions was Kyle Pitts.
Questions from YouTube.
I know that a lot of people think that the Falcons are going to be the reason that Pitts doesn't live up to his potential.
Yeah. Pitts, Jamarcus Russell, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's all going to depend on Desmond fucking Ritter. Who knows? Dude could be the next Tom Brady. We don't know. We don't know. So, we're gonna find out this year if Pitts, can overcome the adversity of the Falcons as a team to live up to who he is as a player. Because he's shown it. I don't think there's any question on if Pitts is an elite tight end. It's that will he ever be in a position to show off that he's an elite tight end?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, on my side personally, I don't know that he is going. He's got the skill. He's got to get somebody to get him to get him the ball though. He only had 59 targets last year. That's almost half of what he had in 2021.
Yeah, but that was with Marcus Mariota throwing him the ball. Don't forget.
And now you have Desmond Ritter. So
again, who could be the next Tom Brady?
Oh, who could be? He doesn't look it, but I mean,
My only other note on the Pitts situation is that there's a reason I haven't traded Cole Kmet, who finished as a top 10 PPR tight end last year, and I expect even with the addition of what's his fucking name from the Packers that we got, Robert Tonyan. Even with the addition of Robert Tonyan, I think that Cole Kmet is still going to finish a top 10 PPR tight end.
I think Kmet would, in my personal opinion, Kmet would be my first choice of tight end. And Pitts being.
I think Pitts is in my starting lineup, but I don't think that I've decided for sure on who's going to fill the spot, or if both of them won't be in my starting lineup.
I would be very happy with Pitts as my backup tight end.
Exactly.
It's a good problem to have.
I've had some people reach out about the availability of either of them, and I've just said you don't want to know the price, because right now you'd have to pry either one of them from my cold dead fingers, because that's the best starting tight end, backup tight end duo in the league, in my opinion.
Okay.
I don't think either one of them are the best starting tight end in the league, but for the quality of both of them combined to be the starter and backup, I think that's the best situation in the league.
Yeah, they're definitely, I would say top 10 tight ends for sure.
Sure.
Easy. So, with that, we're going to cut away and go to a pre-recorded video with Trey and Grant on Minnesota and what kind of thoughts they have for their year with Minnesota. We'll see what they have to say. It should be really good. And then after that, we'll get right back to you guys. All right, D-Gens, welcome back. So we've got a couple of special guests with us today. We've got Trey and Grant, who are both co-owners of the Minnesota Vikings in the Northeast Division here, or in the North Division. So we've got a few questions for them. We thought we would ask what the questions were from the Edge in our channel over on the general site there. And we'll start with that one, and I'll add a couple more questions. So, guys, the first question was, how many years do you guys think Madison, Cook, and Thielen have for all three of them?
You got it, Grant.
All right, so for Thielen, we're kind of looking at a short-term solution there. I mean, I'd say he's probably he signed a 3-year contract, I think. So they're obviously not thinking he's coming in and playing for 1 year, but at the same time, he's getting older and can't expect him to produce as wide receiver one for forever. So I'd say he's our guy for this year, and he'll probably be in the picture next year if we don't trade him. But we drafted Hyatt and we drafted Rice, so we have young guys to fill that slot, and we'll probably end up making a deal at some point to pick up somebody else in that room. And then we have the draft next year as well, which has some pretty nice wide receivers. So we'll have options there. In terms of Cook, running backs are hit or miss. He's had some injuries, but he's also the kind of guy that if he gets in the right situation, he could be a little touchdown dependent, but still a solid flex option for a handful of years. I know he wants a 4-year deal, so whether he gets that is one thing, but he's at least looking with that as the mindset. And for Madison, we've got him. It seems like the Vikings are going to make him the guy down there, and I would expect him to be producing at least for a handful of years here. He's still only 24, so he's got time to be just now coming into his prime as a running back. We view him as an RB1 this year.
I would agree with Madison being an RB1. Anytime he gets a chance when Cook gets hurt, which is pretty often, honestly, he does seem to produce at that level that Cook was doing. I really think Madison is going to be an RB1. As for Cook, you said that he's looking for a 4-year deal. That would put him up into his 31-year age. That's pretty high for an RB anymore.
Especially one that runs like Cook does.
Yep, I don't see him producing for 4 years, but he could be a kind of like what Zeke was to Pollard last year, where he wasn't irrelevant. He was just pretty touchdown dependent.
Right.
What's your guys' best case scenario for where Cook signs?
I'm going to say Miami.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I think there's a lot of short yardage touchdowns to be had there, and I like their offense in terms of how much they're going to be getting down the field and him getting receptions as well. Plus, the wide receivers are there to open up the field for him. So I think, plus there's not really any other running backs down there. I know the rookie is supposed to be solid, but I see him more as probably a receiving back with his speed.
He's a good receiver.
Yeah. Do you guys think with Madison being their prime running back now, that actually ups Cousins' value any?
No, I doubt it.
Yeah.
Not much. I mean,
I think Cousins is right about what we got. He's about 12th to 15th best quarterback in the NFL, and I think he's been that for
It's his floor and his ceiling.
his whole career. He's not going to do worse. He's not going to do better. He's a solid quarterback, which is really all we need with the running back room that we have.
And what about Thielen being in Carolina now? I mean, I know they drafted Mingo.
Mingo, yeah.
Do you think Thielen will be their number one, or do you think Mingo will be able to?
I think it's
right
definitely Thielen.
Yeah.
That was best case scenario for us. When he got cut, we were hoping he'd end up somewhere like Carolina, where he was pretty clear cut as the veteran in the wide receiver room, and they didn't really have a young guy to take it.
Besides Mingo, DJ Chark, right, is number 2?
I think, and they still have Chenault.
Yeah, and Louis Chenault.
Yeah, so like there's dudes there, but I think Thielen is by far the most proven guy in that room.
I mean, they got to throw it to somebody. So why not? Let's see. I'm actually pulling them now. So yeah, they got Thielen, Mingo, Shark, Marshall, and Chenault. So
Very underwhelming room.
Who's the Panthers tight end?
Hayden Hurst. It's Hayden Hurst.
Hayden Hurst.
Well, yeah, worst case scenario, Bryce Young is dumping it off to Hurst and Miles Sanders every down. But I don't.
Yeah, but I think Thielen was good enough last year. Whenever he got the targets, that I think with the targets he'll still be fine.
Yeah, I agree.
So I mean that kind of ends the edges questions and our add-ons for that. I got a couple of questions for you guys as well. First off, were there any regrets that you guys had in the offseason with there being 2 of you, like where one of you couldn't get on and missed out on a trade, or where one of you made a trade and the other one was like, oh man, we shouldn't have pulled that trigger?
That's a good question.
No, I mean not necessarily. Maybe there's still a little. I'm still a little bit hesitant about the Justin Jefferson stuff, but it really. I mean, we'll get to that later, obviously. But like, I'm 100% what we did. There's nothing that I'd really just take back.
Yeah, looking back, maybe we should have drafted edge, but at the same time, that's what the draft next year is for, because we didn't have any corners, so we reached on corners a little bit, but we got the best guys in the class. I mean, we got 3 of the best young corners in the draft class this year, and it allows us to fill a hole that we had on the roster, and then next year we can spend our picks on the couple of positions that we have older guys but are still more than capable for the next couple of years of being contributors.
Is viewed the Justin Jefferson equal to Jonathan Taylor when you guys were making that trade? Was that kind of the equal point?
So for me, I'm a diehard Colts fan. So the way I see it, I'm going to little bit of a tangent on why I think the Colts offense will be good this year, but in terms of Taylor, because when you look at the great rushing quarterbacks that we've seen in the NFL, we've never seen one that had a great running back. But those running backs who were average have always performed at great levels. We look at James Conner, who had 18 touchdowns when Kyler was running. We look at you've got undrafted dudes in the Ravens offense who are going for big games whenever they get put in there, because Lamar just changes the game like that. You've got the Bears running backs last year, even though their offense was terrible, they were still putting up yards. And now we're looking at
Monty still had a great season.
we're looking at the top 3 running back in the NFL, put with one of the best rushing quarterbacks in the NFL. There's only so much you can do to stop that when you also have big targets like Pittman and Woods and Pierce, and you have Downs in between the sticks. Like you've got guys that offense is just going to be hard to stop from a running perspective, and it allows for a lot of touches, a lot of open field, and a lot of touchdowns for Taylor. I think he's going to have a monster year. I see him as the RB1 this year in the NFL. Okay. So for me, I view him as equal, if not even a tad higher than Jefferson. But Trey's a little less though. But at the same time, we're picking up Henry as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's
with
not only did we trade for Taylor,
the way the Titans' offense is shaping up, there's no one out there. I mean, they're going to run the ball every down. So, like, Henry's going to be a touchdown monster this year. And that's
go down to view the whole trade there, TJ. Scroll down a little bit on that page. Okay, so it was just Taylor and Henry straight up for Jefferson in a second.
Yeah.
You could see, I mean, last year they started targeting him more than normal also. So with it being PPR, I mean, that could help out as well.
Well, and I mean, they have what's his face? The wide receiver from Arkansas, Treylon Burks. They got Treylon Burks in that offense, and that is just about it.
Yeah.
Outside Henry's going to get
monster.
So many touches. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And if being 28, the dude's...
Yeah. If there's ever been a running back that's going to age well, like kind of an Adrian Peterson, Frank Gore kind of aging, it's going to be Derrick Henry.
I think Adrian Peterson's a good example of somebody who just seemed to defy the laws of running backs.
Yeah.
Just a jack dude who can go out and do it every day.
I think Henry can play at that level for another couple of years still.
Absolutely. That's how we viewed it. And it was like the opportunity to get 2 elite running backs like that and still have Cook and Madison. And it allows us the flexibility to trade. Say we get in midseason and Cook's playing great and Madison's playing great. You can trade one of them and still get away with it. And we can go get a wide receiver with that. But the value of having a running back, I mean, you can replace wide receivers. It's a lot harder to replace running backs with a set roster, like where there's 32 teams. So you can't just waiver wire.
That is true.
A starter for this week.
The running backs who are already established. I mean, that's the hard part. Like wide receivers can come and go year in and year out. So, I do like.
It's also a lot easier to get a contributing wide receiver in the draft than it was to get a contributing running back, because you're drafting a running back in the second round, and they're, it's a prayer that a couple guys get injured and they see the field. You draft Rashee Rice and Jalen Hyatt in the late first, and those guys are fighting for wide receiver 1 on both their teams.
Yeah, I think Rice, he's under projected. He's projected at 158 and Thielen at 160. I would expect Rice actually probably to be your guys' best wide receiver by the end of the year. I mean, it is Kansas City, so the whole
their offense has the touches. Yeah. If he can perform, he's going to get plenty of shots.
Right. So what about what are your guys' personal expectations for this year? Do you guys just looking to expect to win the division, just be competitive, make the playoffs, go all the way? I mean, realistically speaking,
winning the division, and probably top 10, top 8. I think.
Yeah, it's going to be a 2-man race in the North. There's no doubt about that. So
and looking at the league, like there's only so many teams that, if our running backs stay healthy, there's only so many teams that can counter that kind of production from the offense, let alone the fact that our defense is full of high caliber starters who put up a lot of
just points on points. Yeah,
that was going to be one of my questions, was don't sleep on the Minnesota defense, but what are you guys going to do 2 years from now when half of those guys are over the hill?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I don't think we have more than 2 Vikings starters.
I think
on defense.
You moved some of them. I was getting.
We moved some of them, and most of them signed somewhere else.
That is true.
Like, or they got cut, or
that helped. We had a lot of guys get cut and sign in very favorable situations.
Yeah, that's true.
It was very helpful
allowed
to
us.
us.
What that did was, because we still have the Vikings depth, we have the new Vikings, like young guys who are the starters, while still getting the old guys while they're producing. So like it's a good combination, and I think we have. I went through and I looked through like projected depth charts, and we have, I want to say, 6 players at every position that are a starter in the league. And obviously we'll probably have to cut down and trade a little bit here, but like our D line has like a lot of guys like Henry Anderson is out in Carolina, and people don't realize he's starting at an end out in Carolina. Like stuff like that, where these guys are still young and they're still playing. We've got both of the Vikings starting ends now. We've got one of their linebackers, Bynum at safety, who was a tank last year, and people don't really realize that he was putting up solid stats at safety.
168 points last year. Very
80,
respectable.
80 tackles is pretty good for a safety.
All right. So with that, I am out of questions. Watkins, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I don't think so. I think that's really good.
Trey, Grant, did either of you want to add anything into this before we let you out?
I'll maybe talk about our corner situation a little bit. I know a couple people in the league have.
Yeah.
Or maybe you guys too have questions. You know what is the corner value of us taking, especially like three corners, especially one in the first round. Like what's the thought process behind that? And like, so we both know that all these guys are they're day one starters on our team. Porter, really good at Penn State. Dream situation at the Steelers.
Well, and they cut the starting cornerback, so it's him and Peterson, who we have both of, by the way. So we have their corner 1 and corner 2 out in Pittsburgh now.
Yeah.
I mean, when I look at it, I had you guys pretty much almost dead last in DB points scored.
Yep.
So I feel like that was the best thing for you to do. Defensive backs and wide receivers actually were like the only two things I had you under average in.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think
Gonzalez is a tank out in New England. That's such a favorable system. We've seen guys like Stephon Gilmore and
Jack
Jones out there.
And, I mean,
they're all. I mean, they tear it up in that system.
Yeah.
And then
awesome.
Forbes is a ball hawk, which I mean, if you've got a guy who can just go get pass breakups and picks and stuff left and right, that's can be game changing for a defense.
Yeah, and I think one thing that a lot of people will need to realize, especially with defensive players, is it's not necessarily the greatest players that are scoring the points; it's the ones that just get the opportunities.
Yep.
So I mean, you might have, for example, the dude out of Jacksonville, I think, scored the most out of any defensive player, the linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of his name.
He's
not.
Yeah.
Don't ask me how to pronounce his name.
We'll just pull him up real quick. Let's see here.
Yeah, he's not a well-known name. He just got the tackles, man.
Yeah. Boyesade Aluwakan scored 381 points. The year before, he scored 361. So
almost 200 tackles. Absurd.
I mean, having guys like Bynum and Peterson just to allow us to not necessarily have to count on the rookies day one, but they're there if they're going to produce. Like we have options there.
Yeah.
Trey, Grant, I appreciate you guys coming in and speaking with us and giving us all this insight into what you guys were thinking this first year with Minnesota, and I can't wait to see.
No problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Can't wait to see what you guys. Yeah,
shameless plug. If anybody wants Madison or Cook, they are open for offers. We're not against trading them if the offer's right.
But yeah, guys, thanks so much. Can't wait to see what you guys do. It's going to be interesting to see you guys head to head against Watkins here for that North title.
Take them W's, baby.
But with that, I'll let you guys go. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Well, that was a super great interview. I did not expect it to go quite as well as it did. I want to thank them again for taking, it was about a half hour in total of just a chit chat with them on what they see their team to be. And for the most part, I agree. To traverse out of that, we're actually going to go over me and Watkins projected records for all four teams. And then, like I said, we have offensive and defensive MVP for the NFC North, who we think those two players will be. We may delve a little bit into why we would think that as well. Spoiler alert, both of my guys are not the top two projected players for the offense and defense. So first we'll start with Chicago, what we think their records will be. For me, I have Chicago set at 11-2. Yeah, I see them and Minnesota being very close throughout this season. It will come down to both those teams. Obviously, I don't think the other two are going to have legs to stand on in terms of who's going to win from the North. But what about your record, Watkins?
I have myself going 10-3, and like you said, I mean it's the Bears and Vikings show this year in the NFC North. The Packers and Lions aren't going to be anywhere near competing.
Yeah,
but I like my chances.
Not in full rebuild, absolutely. Well, as for Minnesota, they're next on my little cheat sheet here. I actually have them going 11-2 as well. So yeah, I've got Chicago and Minnesota actually splitting, and then each of them losing to somebody else, and both hitting 11-2. So in my opinion, I think it's going to come down to I think the next tiebreaker is most points scored. And if it goes down to points, I would actually have Chicago edging out Minnesota. I think Minnesota has a better top tier of players, but I think Chicago is going to be a little bit more developed to get through those hell bye weeks. And when it comes down to points, that's going to be the important factor. So, what about you for Minnesota?
Just like you have Minnesota and the Bears both finishing 11-2, I have Minnesota and the Bears both finishing 10-3. I have us losing to the same three teams also. I have us both losing to the Falcons and the Panthers, and then us splitting, so winning against and losing against each other once.
And I think that split is going to be super important, and I think the reason why you split, in my opinion, I don't think Fields gets through the whole year. I think you win in I think it was week 3 was the first time you guys meet. I think you will
week
eke
4,
out there.
Week 4 and week 11.
And I think in week 11 you both have some bye issues, but we'll see. It's going to be a long, exciting season for that part.
I do have a small note on the Vikings record. In week 13, they're playing the Packers, and I have them winning, of course, because how would they lose to the Packers? Except that that's their bye week hell, is week 13. So I just want to note that there's a small chance that the Vikings could lose to the Packers in week 13.
Sounds like wishful thinking.
It is.
Because as they mentioned they did do a lot of diversifying in the defensive zone. I don't think it'll take a lot for them to get the points they'll need to beat a team like that. So you said it was Green Bay, right?
Yeah.
They're actually next on my list in terms of scoring. So for their record, I'll let you go first. What do you think Green Bay ends this year?
I have the Packers going 2-11.
Okay.
I have them winning against the Saints in week 3 and against the Lions in week 11. I have them splitting with the Lions this year.
Okay. I actually have them going 0-13.
Wow.
There are going to be some nail biters, the Lions and the Bucks.
And the Saints. No, I don't think they're going to lose. I think the Bucks.
I'm not the Bucks, the Saints.
Yeah, that's the Saints.
I think those are going to be some nail biters, but I don't think they got what it takes to pull out a win. I do think they run the table at Ofer, and it probably will not be the only team, spoiler alert, that I see doing that. So they may still not even get the top pick. And then we've got Detroit. So if Detroit's got, or if Green Bay went 0-13, that means for me, Detroit had to at least win 2. I've got them going 3-10. I've got them beating Green Bay both times and then beating the Saints.
I have them, like I said, I have them splitting with the Packers. So I have 2-11 with them winning against the Packers once but losing the second time, and then likewise beating the Saints. So I have a pair of pairs for my projections. I've got 10-3 for me and the Vikings and 2-11 for the Packers and the Lions.
Okay, well, it sounds like for both of us then it's pretty cut. It's going to be a 2-man race.
Yeah, this division's there's not a lot of parity when it comes to these schedules and these teams.
You're going to have 2 vying for the crown this year, and you're going to have 2 vying for the top pick more than likely for next year. And that's kind of how Green Bay and Detroit won it. So, I mean, no fault of their own. They saw what they had, and they're going to try and make what they can out of MVPs. So I will pick the offensive MVP first, and then I'll let you pick the MVP for the defense first. So, for me, the obvious answer, especially in terms of I think skill and projections, was Fields. I don't think Fields goes all 17 games. As much as I would like to see it, I'm not a big Bears fan. I am from Illinois, but I live closer to the St. Louis area. So
So did I. I don't
there's a
have an
little
excuse.
there's a little bit of Cubs, Cardinals resonance coming
Yeah.
in at Chicago, Blackhawks, Blues. So when the Rams were here, even though they weren't good, it's still like, oh, you don't want to like the Bears or the Chiefs. So I don't think he goes all 17 games. I probably see him doing 12 to 13. I think there's going to
Hater.
point. I think there's a point where he breaks or hurts something and is out 4 weeks.
Hater.
So I actually have Kirk Cousins, Mr. I can't do anything on prime time.
He's not even my
offensive
potential secondary.
Well, this is the reason why. So, yes, he's lost Thielen. Yes, he's lost Cook, but he still has the best wide receiver,
Jettis.
Justin Jefferson. And then we're also going to add in Addison.
True.
And let's not forget, they have Hawkinson, like they were mentioning earlier in the
I'm
interview.
a huge Hawkinson fan.
He's got tons of talent around him. And Madison is no slouch. He is probably a top 10 running back when he gets to play throughout the entire year. I think with that, having some younger blood, because Jefferson is not old by any means, and Addison, that he is going to rack up the points. That's why I think he will eke out between Taylor. I don't think Henry actually has a shot. Probably will be in the top 5 in terms of points in the division, but that is who I've got. I've got Kirk Cousins. What about you, Watkins?
I have Justin Fields. To nobody's surprise, Justin Fields should be the offensive MVP of the NFC North. I think the only real competition is from Taylor and Kirk Cousins, but I think that Justin Fields is going to run away with the most offensive points scored in the NFC North this year.
Yeah, I mean, you look at projections here. You've got Fields, Cousins, and then Wilson, Taylor, Edmonds.
I guess Wilson is actually an outside dark horse to actually become the offensive MVP for the NFC North.
It's very possible. They have a new ownership, or not ownership, but they have a new coach. So Denver, every game they won was because of their defense, and Russell Wilson may have just needed a new coach to tell him what to do instead of him telling that coach what to do. I mean, he was great with Seattle when Carroll was telling him this is how you're going to run it. So he could be. That would definitely be a dark horse. Sorry, we got Cousins and we got Fields on the offensive side. Who do you have for your defensive MVP?
Feels a little biased, considering I had my own quarterback winning offensive MVP. But for defensive MVP, I have Jalen Pitre, or however you pronounce his name.
Pitre.
Now, before you ask, no, I don't think there's a world where he repeats 318 fantasy points and has 147 goddamn tackles in a single year again. Texas defense were on the field a lot last year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're going to be on the field as much this year. I think C.J. Stroud's going to give them a better chance. I don't think the Texans are. I don't think we're in the world where the Texans are really competing yet, but they're going to be better. I think Texans are going to be a little bit better offensively this year. So the defense is not going to be on the field as much. So I don't think there's any world in which Pitre racks up 147 tackles. I think Pitre is going to revert back to still elite safety numbers, not absurd safety numbers.
Yeah.
But I think he will still score upper 200s, like 280-ish is what I think my real hope is the tackles maybe come down a little bit, but he still keeps 5 to 7 interceptions, and he still scores about 280 points. And I'm really hoping that's where his modest floor is at. Obviously, there will probably be years where he gets hurt or scores lower, doesn't have as many interceptions. But I'm really hoping I've got Pitre for the long haul with elite safety numbers like 250 to 280 fantasy points scored.
Okay.
And then my backup, Tremaine Edmonds, also on my team. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Yeah, no favoritism
Yeah, no, none at all.
in this interview here. So, for me, so I don't remember if I actually said it when we were talking to the other guys, or if it were just when we were chatting. But when it comes to defense, it's more about the opportunities that you get than how good of a player you are. And you
Sure.
just mentioned that with PJ.
Yep.
It's more about the opportunity that he had, and I think that will go down. When I look at the defensive players in this division, I'm actually picking a player who is not on one of the teams that I think will actually make it into or one of the top two teams in the division.
Can I guess then?
You can.
So it's a Lions or a Packers player.
It is a Lion or a Packer player.
I think it's Ernest Jones.
You think it is Ernest Jones? Let's go down here. So Ernest Jones, you would be right, actually. So
I love Ernest Jones.
So when you look at Ernest Jones, he's on the Rams. The Rams, somebody's got to make a tackle on that.
Yeah. Besides Aaron Donald.
And Aaron Donald.
Aaron Donald can't make every tackle.
He doesn't make a lot of tackles. Aaron Donald is one of those guys who is not fantasy great. He is.
That is true. He's probably one of the best defensive players to ever play the game of football.
Yeah, let's. I mean, tackles.
I mean, that's still pretty good.
But
it's because he gets a lot of sacks. He's so sack dependent.
He's a defensive lineman. Linemen normally don't make tackles. But you got Jones here, who's going to be a starting inside linebacker for the team. He scored 201 points last year, and that was with Wagner also being one of the linebackers. And you look at it now, and this one right here, Rosemoon, that caused a couple of naysayers in our league. I think he'll be fine, but you're looking at Michael Hecht.
Michael Holt is very good. I think he's underrated also. I think he's also going to be very good this year.
And Daniel Hardy, I think.
I don't even know who Daniel Hardy is.
But I think Jones emerges as the leader in that second line. He had 113 tackles last year. I would venture to guess it'll probably be closer to the 150 range. Only one fumble, one interception. Interceptions, I don't think will go up, but I think he will have more opportunity to get some sacks, maybe 2 or 3 sacks this year. And forced fumbles are always, luck of the draw. I expect.
Let me see that trade. Tutu Atwell and Ernest Jones for a 2023 first-round pick. That's pretty good. I agree. Obviously, I don't have Ernest Jones as my pick for the defensive MVP, but I agree with your assessment that he's going to be a stud.
They're projecting him an extra 20 points more, 224. I think he ends up in the 270 range, and I think that is probably the best that you will see. Petrie, probably around 250, and I think Edmonds is probably around 250 to 260 as well. So Jones probably ekes it out, in my opinion, being on the Rams. That's my main.
I think I think it's going to be like this for every division, but I think the defensive MVPs are going to be way harder to predict.
Yeah. We'll see what it all comes down to. So anyway, that is what we've got for records, MVPs. That's all we have for today. The only thing I have to add is anybody from the NFC East that is an owner, if you want, DM me, DM Watkins. Just let us know by this Sunday if you want to be interviewed. I think the Edge has already reached out. I'd love to hear from him. I think he will have a fountain of intel on his team and what his plans are. But please reach out, and if you have any questions for the NFC East teams, just type it into Discord, and we'll make sure we ask them so I don't have to come up with all the questions. Anything to add tonight, Watkins?
I don't think so. Yeah, just for the Eagles, Cowboys, Commanders, and Giants owners, please, the more we have actual answers from the owners of these teams, the less TJ and I have to conjecture our way through conversations about them.
And with that, good night, degenerates, and we will see you in about a week.
See ya.